Good morning. Another day, another part of the build. So we have now got as far as having all 4 cylinders on, and we put the sump plate on and so on and so forth. Now we're looking at putting on the cylinder heads. We're going to put on cylinder heads, push rod tubes, new push rod tube envelopes. I'll show you these. These look like beetle ones, but on CTs and water boxes and so on. A small end and a big end. A big end and a small end. The small ones will fit both ends for beetle push rod tubes, and the larger ones fit for whatever. Now what I do is I put a little marker on the opposite side to the seam, so that when the engine's in place, it hangs down with the seam on the top in case of any leaks. I put these together, I put these on with some silicone grease, just to make everything straightforward. Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to hang the cylinder head on. We're going to leave a little gap, then after the seals have been put on, we're going to put the push rod through like this, so just let it all dangle down, just so it holds everything in place. Right, so I'm going to prepare up these rubber seals now, and we'll take it from there. So there's the tube prepared. A little bit of silicone grease on the rubber seals. These are in the Victor Reinz kit. These rubbers are a good quality. I've seen in the cheap kits that these seals, the rubber compound, which is supposed to have a high silicon content, I think, the rubber compound is very flaky and chalky, and I don't get the impression that they would last very long. But there we go. Now big end is that end. In she goes, just like that, just to hold them in. There we go. Right, carry on and do the rest. So we've now offered up the head. See, it's still got plenty of room. We've offered up the head. We've put the push rod tubes in, and then just to hold it on, I just put 2 nuts on there, one on there, just to hold it in place. And then I'm going to build the other side, and then I'll show you the next bit. Right, so that is now the heads on both sides, and the push rod tubes just loosely put into place. 2 nuts just to hold it, 2 nuts just to hold it. Now I'm going to put it on its front, and I'll show you the next bit. So I'll have the engine sit on his nose, ratchet strap to hold everything in place while we start to tighten up. Now why do I go through all this palaver? Because if you look, you can see quite clearly that there's an angle between there and there and there and there. And if you just tightened it down straight off, you wouldn't get a very good oil seal, and you'd tend to have oil leaks at the cylinder head end of things. So what I do, give it a little bit of a crank, and then, so that now as you've got a bit of tension on there, just put this in the hole here and just look, just tidy it up a little bit, make it a little happier, you know. Then give it a little crank up. And we see that everything's going down nicely. And we're going to want to see these studs come through. Okay. So now I've got 4 nuts caught. Only just, I can't actually get the washers on. So you tighten progressively until you can get a nut with a washer at all 4 corners, as it were, and that you're happy with the way everything is settling down. Alright, and then you can start applying, get all the nuts on, start to nip it up. Don't try and torque it down yet, we're not there yet, things to do yet. Okay. Right, so we now have the nuts all in place, just finger tight. No more. As you can see, the tubes are all adjusted so that we get a good seal. You can see the difference between this side and that side, you see. You see, it's got to come up quite a long way. Right, okay, so got the tension on there. Now I'm going to do the same thing side. So, same procedure as before. If you just make that little and then we can progressively tighten. Right, there we go, you can see the shape. Now I'm going to take the strap off and we're going to do an initial tightening down of the heads to the barrels, make sure everything is all square, and we're it's just nipped up at the moment. Right, in other words, all these nuts are only just on. Right, so now we're going to torque it down progressively. 12 Newton meters, 18 Newton meters, 25 Newton meters. We do this with the aid of a torque wrench. Here we are, it shows you, look, good old Haynes. This model, this book is Haynes 638 and you can get it online, I reckon. Right, okay, so what we're going to do is I'm currently set on 12, right, which is the lowest one. So what we'll do is we'll just go around and bring it up. Now the other thing is we're going to want to check that the washers are all neatly in place. What I mean by that, I'll show you. Let me just get a bit of a nip up on this. So it's just starting to hold, you know. Right. It's just holding. Okay, just holding it. So now we can go around and check again that what we want to see is that the oil seals for the pushrod tubes are nicely seated down. Okay, that'll avoid oil leaks later on. So now we do the same thing this side. We're tightening up. I want to check that the oil seals are all nice and flat in their housings, and then it'll avoid any potential leaks. Now, the other thing we want to look at is to make sure that the washers, the thrust washers, are nicely centered. You see, that's not bad. That one's a bit north, that one's a bit south, that one's a bit whatever. So right, now what you can do, actually that's not looking too bad. Right, again, check that everything's going back. Check twice, fix once. Yeah. Okay, now we'll have another look at these washers. Yeah, that's a little bit south. There. You see, now they're all more or less centralized on. So now we'll take it up to the 12, and that's at 12. Go around it again. Let's have a look where everything is. First of all, pushrod tube seals are in nicely. Tinware tin is in nicely. These are all pretty good. Alright. So where were we? We have now done the 12s. Everything is seated in. It's all looking pretty tidy. So now, up from 12 to 18. So, try and develop a diagonal pattern. Now the heads are starting to go down. You feel it doesn't move anymore. It's finished squishing down. Then we're going to wind it up to 25. Make sure everything is in place. Right, okay, here we go. go. Okay, and we will be redoing these. The engine has run for half an hour. Retorque the heads. Okay. Right. So that's the heads done for now. So now we can look at the rockers. Not handed, but it is worth referencing them left and right. Now what you do is you have to, I slacken off the screws, right, 13 mil, turn the adjusting screws backwards and forwards so everything is good, you know. And then also the other side, you want to inspect the surfaces. If they're still looking good, you can reuse them. You can get the screws, and I think what I'm going to do is, these are not bad, they're a bit worn. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to reuse these for the moment, and then maybe think about changing them over at the next service. Otherwise it's all intact. Now we're going to, is ready for offering up. Okay, so now we're pretty much ready to fit the push rods and the rocker bar onto the top of the valves. Now remember, try and line up the gun. Can you see that is the cam follower right down there, so that when we put the push rod in, you have to make sure it's sitting in the middle, can I show you that, of the cam follower, not fallen down to one side. So it's got to be like that, not like that. So this is how we do this gently. These push rods are straight and they're clean. So you can sort of see they just fall down. So what you have to do is you go gently down to here. Now, what you want to be sure of is that you're lined up properly with the hole. So, you see, how can I show this? Right. When you think they feel right, finish. There we are. See, there, I don't know if I can line that up, but can you see that push rod is in that hole? That push rod is in that hole. So everything, so the push rods have got into the top of the cam followers, the tappets, right? So now we're going to knit these up. And then we can start thinking about doing the valve adjustment. Now obviously it's just somewhere in its stroke, we don't know where we are. There we are. That's just a very, very approximate setting. All we're doing is making sure that the bottom of the push rod is in the tappet and the cam follower, and the top one is coming into the receiving cup of the rocker arm, and then we'll sort out the valve clearances later. Okay, This will eventually be torqued down to 25. Okay, so now we're going to fit the rocker box cover. When I change heads, I like to buy a new set of springs. So here we are greasing up the rocker cover. Make sure it's got a good coating of grease, especially around these two corners. It will help the sealing process, as it were. Right. So that's prepared. So that's the bread being delivered. Okay, it's all been prepped. On we go without too much fuss. Now what we've got to do is make sure that those push rods really are properly at home. Like that. Little bit of nipping up. So now we nip everything down. Check that everything looks right. I can see the center, I can see the center, I can see the center, I can see the center. So I think we're there. Fit the retaining wire for the rocker box. Fit them quite regularly as you fit the thing. Also, I like to have it sad. The curve is going down that way. Right, okay, we can pop the box on. So we can start putting on the under tins. I use hit caps. Not too tight because you're going to have to give it a bit of a jiggle and a joggle to adjust. But that's looking all right. Right, same thing the other side.